And make sure your septum piercing is straight.
Okay.
I'm not refilming if your septum piercing's not straight.
Have you done that?
No. It's just bugged the shit out of me.
Do you need me to clap?
Somebody has to clap, yes.
Would you like me to do it?
I think you'd be good at it.
1, 2, 3. Oh, that was a good clap.
That was good.
Thank you.
It was loud. It was very resonant.
I heard you all wanted more of me. So here I am.
Okay.
Fuck off. Okay, well, stop talking and maybe I can do this like a professional. All right. I don't know if I'm doing it again or not.
You're not doing it again.
Okay.
Now you're just, now the title card
Is up.
is up.
Okay.
And now the title card has gone away.
Okay.
And now...
We're talking about sperm today.
We are.
Everyone, if you haven't seen the time that Ash told me that they were ready to have kids in Bali, it's a beautiful video. Still makes me cry. But after that, we actually had to start the actual process of trying to conceive. Spoiler alert, neither of us can produce sperm naturally. So we had to buy some. And that created a very interesting experience that I think shocked both of us in a myriad of ways. And I thought it would be helpful because no one really talks about what it would be like to do this. And so for family or folks that are curious about what it's like to actually procure one of the main ingredients to conceiving.
Semen. I kind of wanted to work the word semen into the video at least once.
You know, one of the things I always admire about you is how naturally things flow.
Like a sailor on the ocean. Or, like a seaman. Okay. So, on the main channel, I hope to channel a more mature attitude and create a more comprehensive guide to buying sperm. But this video, we're just going to talk about some of the, unexpected things that came up. Like, what they don't tell you about buying sperm. Because there was a lot that really threw us off or we didn't consider.
So let's start by bringing up, what did you expect and how was it different?
I didn't understand how many options that we would have as far as shopping for donors went. I think when I pictured it before actually knowing more about the process and going through it, I pictured having anywhere from 30 to 50 folks that we'd be looking at, sorting through and then choosing. And then maybe considering a handful of factors that were important to us. But really, they encourage you to think about 1,000 factors. They commodify almost every feature and aspect about donors in order kind of to get you to
Pay more money.
Pay more. So there were so many more elements to consider, but then the number of donors that we actually got to choose from was much smaller because we had one thing that was really, really important to us. What was that one thing?
It was the ability to be willing to be known. So for those of just a very quick definition is there's willing to be known donors and non-willing to be known donors, which essentially means if at 18 our kids want to know who their donor is, they have the ability, they will be able to reach out and do that. Personally, there's no wrong decision for any family. For us personally, it felt like too much of a decision to make for them. Mm-hmm. But that really changed our results.
Yeah.
So some of the sites that we looked at originally, they would advertise we have thousands of donors, active donors, and there's active and inactive donors. So you can you might find a donor, but they're inactive, so you can request that they donate more, but it doesn't mean that they will. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of that. But when we would turn that filter on, just that one filter would change things from hundreds or thousands down to less than 10.
Yeah, 9.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you have all the other factors to consider. The biggest one for us personally was health, I would say.
Yeah, we wanted to avoid conditions that were debilitating and chronic. So I think one of the things we got tested for was a gene related to cystic fibrosis, and then making sure that the donor also was not positive for that kind of gene. So we were trying to avoid
terminal type of illnesses or debilitating illnesses that were preventable just by us doing a little bit extra research. So when you start the process, one of the things that was surprising to me was, one, the variability of willing to be known. I think, like, I knew that over 50% would be non-willing to be known. Like, that wasn't a shock to me. But the vast discrepancy, I would say, was kind of shocking. And then once we added a filter of the health things that we needed to consider, then you're like, okay, we've got like 3 people, you know.
Yeah, I would say we went through a total of 14 cycles, right?
Yep.
I would say throughout all those cycles, the most options that we had was maybe like 10.
Yeah.
And then the least was like, I think once we had like 1.
Yeah, we only had 1.
And that is a huge moment for you. You're like at a crossroads because you have to decide, like, do we still move forward with this attempt? Is this donor right? And if you don't vibe with them, like, do you skip that attempt?
And that might not seem like a lot to skip 1 month, like skip 1 cycle. But after you get negative after negative after negative, skipping even 1 cycle feels like waiting an eternity.
And even if you're young and healthy, once you have had a couple failed attempts, you can't help but feel this like strange pressure of your biological clock ticking. Right?
Yeah, no, totally. But anyway, back to the semen.
Yay!
Sometimes you're going to keep the same donor once you find a donor. One of the tricky parts is that you might run out.
Someone described it once like buying a house. Once you find a house that you like, it becomes really emotional and you like form this bond with it because you start picturing your life and your future in that house. So we started picturing our life and our future and our kiddos potentially with aspects that like might have to do with the donor that we like and chose. And so when we would have a donor and we'd have attempts and then they would run out, it almost felt like a loss. It was really sad. And then additionally, if you're like really planning ahead and you want to buy a few vials because maybe you want to have more than 1 child and maybe it feels important to you for those children to have the same donor, it can be really hard too when that donor runs out of sperm. And like, what are you going to do? Buy up all their sperm? You can't afford it, I promise.
Yeah, it's a huge investment. It's not inexpensive in any like way. And I mean, we had like the premium of the premium packages because I wanted to be able to look at it. I was hook, line, and sinker. That's another semen joke, you know?
Yay!
So, like, we had this huge package package. So, you become attached, and because you can see certain packages, they'll have, like, adult photos, childhood photos. They have, like, voice interviews. You can get attached to their voice, or maybe their reason for donating. And so, every single time that you either run out of sperm, their allotment, you run through these like a huge wave of emotions, and you have to continue to process, and then you have to like go through it. And I think, you know, obviously picking a donor, I think is, you know, more significant than buying a house in certain, you know, in certain regards. But I think that emotional attachment that you form, or the way that you picture life, you still have that same view, and you're wondering, oh, are they going to have these eyes or that eyes based off of what the donor and like what the egg you're using has. And so you just change the point of view, I think.
Yeah, like the visual of what
life could be like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So speaking of like eyes and things like that, what were some of the other filters or elements that you could select and sort through on the Sperm website?
In a world where you don't care if they're willing to be known or not, and where you have like perfect health criteria and you have a lot of openness there are as many filters as you could possibly think of. You could think of what astrological sign you wanted them to be. You can pick their height.
Yeah, if it was like really important to you that your baby's donor was a Taurus, like the website,
that is a 6'3" above Taurus, you can do that.
You can pay to submit a photo of yourself, and then the staff at the website will find a
matching or a complementary, or like if you have a partner and you want them to look like that,
right?
Then they will find somebody that like has similar attributes. So if you have like if you wanted to have like, if we wanted, since we used my eggs, we didn't upload a picture of Ash, and then we could try to find someone that was similar looking, even though they could never. No one could ever compare. Sweet. So you could do something like that. But you also could do like different hobbies, different religions, ethnicity. Do you want them to have a certain level of college degree?
You could pay extra money for your donor to be an Ivy League graduate. You could pay a premium for Ivy League sperm. And that's where I kind of thought...
Kind of got weird.
The commodifying of all these different things and, like, people's futures and families, like, it gave me an icky feeling. So that kind of stuff bummed me out.
Yeah, personally. Yeah.
Another descriptor that the website offered as far as, like, donors go is the staff who...
Oh, the staff impressions?
Yeah, they would give staff impressions of the donors. And sometimes, if a donor wouldn't submit photos, the staff would choose...
A celebrity look-alike.
like, comparable celebrity.
And you know, they'd be like, they look like a striking resemblance to Josh Hartnett.
Or John Stamos.
And you're like,
no
fucking way. Like, in the world where they also have brown hair. Like, or something like that. But one of the things that I did like, so the staff will do like a recorded interview, like either written or recorded. But there was one that I remember that the staff said, he always comes and remembers everybody by name, is really sweet and cordial and just like respectful. And for some reason that just like, I'm like, that seems like a good quality.
And just because, you know, a donor has certain qualities obviously does not mean that a kiddo that's related to that donor is going to have those qualities. However, liking certain things about the donor did feel important to Gray and I because...
the willing to be known.
Yeah, because if we are going to meet them one day, if that's important to our kids and we all like meet up one day, we would ideally like to be sitting across the table from someone who we could have a conversation with. Did they have values that at least somewhat aligned with us? Did they either explicitly say that they were open to LGBT families or imply really heavily that they were open to LGBT families? If we were to all meet one day, we wanted us all to feel like safe and excited.
Yeah, and one of our actual like site did say like very explicitly that they supported LGBT families. So that was important to us, but also as a queer family, you don't want your children to meet their donor and have them be like, oh, I can't, like, I don't know, something horrible and bigoted and, you know, something like that. Because, you know, we think our children are the greatest things in the world. And we never want them to ever feel, you know, othered in any kind of way.
100%.
Especially by their donor.
Yes.
A way that we kind of did that was in the premium package. You could listen to like a 45-minute like interview with the donor,
and it was a really sweet way to get some more intimate information about them, like directly in and from their own voice, and hear like personal stories about them. That was very sweet. I remember there was like one donor shared a story about getting a bloody nose on stage when he was playing the lion in the Wizard of Oz play. And he just loved theater, and I thought that was very endearing. Another donor really liked rocket power, and I was like, nice, man.
Yeah.
That was just a cute little window into like who they were.
And they would also share like why they chose to donate. So some were like, hey, my sibling struggled with infertility, or my best friend has, and then there were some that were really honest and were like, I just needed a little bit of extra money. And we're like, okay, cool. Hey, at least we know, right?
Yeah.
They also had like weird things on their profiles that were like their favorite pet, their hobbies, what they do as a profession, like things like that. So you just kind of got to know them, at least like somewhat.
And then like kind of circling back to this idea that just because a donor is a certain way does not mean a kiddo is a certain way. Like that is all true. However, at some point, you need to make a decision, right? Like for us, if we had 3 donors in front of us and they were all equally good as far as like health went and if they were willing to be known, like there was something that had to tip the scales. Or unless you were just like, hey Siri, pick which donor.
Roll a D4.
Right.
Like, yeah, and then you just kind of go for it.
So some of that silly stuff like what pet they liked or what their hobbies were or just what their vibe was, even though that doesn't necessarily inform about our kids, you needed something to choose.
Yeah, it ended up just being like, who could we think that we could have a dinner with or have a lunch with and find some common ground. Right. That was all it was at the end of the day. And I think like we are so thankful to the donor that we ended up with.
Yeah,
Like,
another cool thing is Gray talked about like the childhood photos and the adult photos and the audio interviews. So all of that you could download and save, and then if you want, when you have or if you have that conversation with your kiddo about their donor, that is all stuff that like you can share with them. They don't have to be this kind of ambiguous, faceless, human. You can be like, hey, are you interested in seeing them at some point in their life or hearing their voice? Because that is a thing we can offer you, which I think is cool. I just like to have options for my kids. They get to pick what to do, but I like to like have a buffet of options.
I think we should tell them that we conceive naturally.
And then something lastly that I didn't expect is whether you are doing a willing to be known donor or an anonymous donor, if it isn't a person from your actual life, the chances that your donor lives across the country is actually like decently high. I had this preconception that like there was like a local sperm bank of like folks who donated from Minneapolis, but that is not the case. There's only a handful of sperm banks in the country.
And also, people are allowed to move.
So true.
I remember talking to someone and they asked like, oh, are you ever afraid that you're going to run into them? And I'm like, no. I mean, that would be wild, but also they're a stranger, you know, to us. Even though we have like photos and we have like the audio interview, like I don't think I could pick their voice out of a lineup or their like face if I was just walking down the street. So it's not a huge risk for us.
And the sperm bank that they came from is several states away.
Yeah.
So
it's unlikely.
But I just think that's important for people to understand, because if you do want to meet up with them one day and have your kiddos meet them one day, I just think it's important to know that, like...
It'll be an effort.
Yeah, it's an effort.
So that is our conversation on sperm and how weird it was.
You know what I think would be funny? Do you know are you on, like, North Sea TikTok?
You mean, like, the singing?
The yo-ho. I feel like if I didn't get a copyright strike, that would be really funny to title.
We could
music.
go, go.
Or I guess we could just sing it.
Yeah.
I don't know how it goes, though.
Yo, go, da, da, da. Cool. Well, that was it. If you haven't watched my previous videos, That I'm Not Dead, I encourage you to go and watch that because I talk about a lot of books. And I am going to be making some content on Patreon just for patrons that want to hear me talk about the books that I'm reading. And that's a whole nother video. And if I start talking about it now, this video will be 47 years long. So go become a patron and join me to talk about books and other cool stuff.
Yay!
And I love you.
I love you.